The crystal caves of Kepler 442b had been quiet for 3,000 years. Deep beneath the planet's surface, where the walls sparkled like diamonds and the air hummed with ancient power, lived the last dragon in the galaxy. Her name was Zephyria, and she was older than most civilizations. Zephyrria's scales shone like liquid gold in the soft light of the crystal formations. She was massive, stretching over 200 feet from her great horned head to the tip of her powerful tail. Her eyes were the color of amber, filled with the wisdom and sadness of ages. She had seen empires rise and fall, watched stars burn out and new ones be born. But now, as she looked down at the 3 precious eggs nestled in beds of glowing crystals, she felt something she had never felt before. In all her long years. The eggs were beautiful, each one the size of a small building. One glowed with silver light, another with copper warmth, and the third pulsed with emerald energy. Inside each egg, a baby dragon was growing, ready to hatch any day now. They would be the first dragons born in over 500 years. They were her children, her hope, her future. But death was coming for them all. Zephyria lifted her great head and listened to the sounds from above. The harvester fleet had arrived 3 days ago, and their machines were already tearing apart the surface of her world. She could hear the terrible grinding of their mining equipment, the screech of metal on stone, the thunder of explosions as they destroyed everything in their path. The harvesters were not alive in any way that mattered. They were machines built by a race that had died out long ago, but programmed to keep consuming forever. They moved from world to world like a plague of metal locusts, stripping away everything organic, everything beautiful, everything alive. They turned planets into empty shells of rock and metal, then moved on to find new worlds to destroy. Zephyria had fought them before, many times over the centuries. Her fire breath could melt their strongest armor. Her claws could tear through their largest ships. Her magic could turn their own weapons against them. But she had always been running, always retreating, always searching for a safe place to hide. No, there was nowhere left to run. She had tried to raise the alarm when she first detected their approach. She sent messages to every world she could reach, begging for help, offering her vast knowledge and power in exchange for protection. But the younger races feared her. They saw her as a monster from the old days, a creature of destruction and terror. None of them answered her calls. The dragons had always been alone. They were too proud to ask for help, too powerful to need allies. Each dragon ruled their own territory, protected their own treasures, fought their own battles. It was the way. Things had always been, but now Zephyria understood the terrible cost of that pride. She was the last of her kind, and soon she would be gone too. The harvesters would break through her defenses, destroy your eggs, and end the dragon race forever. Coiled her massive body around the 3 eggs, trying to shield them with her own flesh. The crystals around her began to glow brighter, responding to her distress. The cave itself seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, as if the planet knew what was coming. Above her, the sounds of destruction grew louder. The harvesters were working, their way down through the layers of rock and crystal, following the energy signatures of her eggs. They had detected the life within them, and nothing would stop them from claiming that life for their endless hunger. Zephyria closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, searching for any sign of hope in the darkness of space. She had one last desperate plan, one final chance to save her children. She would send out a call for help, not to the governments or the military forces that had ignored her before, but to anyone who might listen, anyone who might care. She opened her great mouth and released a sound that was more than just noise. It was a song of desperation, a cry of maternal love, a plea that traveled through space itself on waves of psychic energy. She poured all her pain and fear and hope into that call, broadcasting it on every frequency she could reach. "Help me," she whispered into the void. "My children are dying. Please, someone, anyone, help me save them." The call raced through space, faster than light, touching every world in the sector. Most who heard it dismissed it as cosmic noise or equipment malfunction. Others recognized it as dragon speech and turned away in fear. But somewhere in the darkness, aboard a small human research ship, someone was listening. Communications officer Lisa Morgan had been monitoring the deep space frequencies for 5 years. She had heard strange signals before, but nothing like this. The sound made her heart race and her eyes fill with tears. Even through the static and interference, she could hear the desperation, the love, the terrible fear of a mother who knew her children were about to die. "Captain Sullivan," she called out, her voice shaking. "You need to hear this right now." Captain Jake Sullivan was a quiet man with steady hands and kind eyes. He had been exploring the outer rim of space for years, making friends with alien races and helping solve problems wherever he found them. His ship, the New Horizon, was small but fast, carrying a crew of 37 humans who had volunteered for the dangerous work of first contact. Jake listened to the recording that Lisa played for him. He did not understand the language, but he understood the emotion behind it. Someone somewhere was in terrible trouble. Someone needed help. "Where is it coming from?" he asked. "Kepler 442b, Lisa replied. "About 6 hours away at maximum speed. But Captain, the readings are strange. The source seems to be something very large and very powerful. I think it might be dangerous." Jake studied the star charts on his screen. Kepler 442b was not on any of the major trade routes. It was listed as uninhabited, though the surveys were old and incomplete. Most ships avoided it because of the strange energy readings from its surface. "What do you think, Lisa?" he asked. Quietly, "Should we ignore it?" Lisa looked at her captain with surprise. In all their years together, she had never heard him suggest ignoring a distress call. "Sir, you know we can't do that. If someone needs help, we help them. That's what we do." Jake nodded slowly. He knew she was right. It was what they did. It was what humans did. When someone was in trouble, you helped them, even if it was dangerous, even if it made no sense, even if they were complete strangers. "Navigator Williams," he called out. "Set course for Kepler 442b, maximum speed." "Aye, Captain," came the reply from the navigation station dot as the New Horizon turned toward the distant crystal world. Jake felt a strange certainty settle over him. He did not know what they would find there. He did not know if they would be able to help. But he knew they had to try. Behind them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, unchanged by the small human ship racing toward an impossible destiny. Ahead of them, a mother dragon waited in the darkness, her children's lives measured in hours, her hope resting on creatures she had never met and who had no reason to save her. The dragon could not save her young alone. But perhaps, just perhaps, she would not have to try. The New Horizon flew through space faster than it had ever flown before. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past as his ship raced toward Kepler 442b. His crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their task, but all of them thinking about the strange distress call they had received. Lisa Morgan sat at her communications console, listening to the signal over and over again. Each time she heard it, the desperation in that alien voice seemed to grow stronger. She had worked with Jake for 5 years, and in that time they had answered dozens of distress calls. They had rescued miners trapped in collapsed tunnels, helped broken ships repair their engines, and even stopped a small war between 2 trading colonies. But this felt different. This felt bigger. "Captain," she said quietly. "I've been analyzing the signal. Whatever sent this message, it's incredibly powerful. The psychic energy alone should have burned out our receivers, but somehow it didn't. It's like the sender was being very careful not to hurt us." Jake nodded thoughtfully. He had been wondering about that himself. Most powerful alien races they had encountered were either completely indifferent to humans or actively hostile. The idea that something so strong would be careful with their fragile equipment was unusual. Navigator Pete Williams looked up from his charts. "Captain, we're going to have a problem when we reach Kepler 442b. The planet is surrounded by some kind of energy field. It's not dangerous, but it's going to make navigation tricky. We might have trouble getting close to the surface." "What about the Harvester fleet?" Jake asked. "Any sign of them?" Chief Engineer Maria Santos answered from her station. "Long-range sensors show massive ship signatures in orbit around the planet. At least 20 vessels, all of them huge. They're definitely harvesters, and they're already starting their mining operations." Everyone on the bridge fell silent. The harvesters were known throughout the galaxy as unstoppable destroyers. They had consumed dozens of worlds over the past century, and no military force had ever been able to stop them for long. The New Horizon was a research ship, not a warship. They had mining charges and basic shields, but nothing that could fight. An entire fleet. "Sir," said Tactical Officer Ryan Cooper, "maybe we should call for backup. The Earth Defense Force has ships that could help us." Jake shook his head. "By the time they get here, it will be too late. Whoever sent that distress call needs help now, not in 3 weeks." Dr. Helen Brooks, the ship's medical officer, came onto the bridge carrying her portable scanner. She was a small woman with gray hair and gentle hands, but Jake had seen her work miracles in the worst situations. "Captain, I've been studying the signal Lisa recorded. The biological readings are fascinating. Whatever creature sent this, it's enormous, probably over 200 feet long, with a lifespan measured in thousands of years. And there are smaller life signs nearby, much smaller, but with similar biological patterns." "Children," Lisa said softly. "That's what I heard in the voice. A mother calling for help to save her children." The bridge was quiet again. Every person there understood what that meant. They all had families back on Earth, people they loved and would do anything to protect. The idea of a mother watching her children die while she was powerless to save them was something that touched them all. "We're going in," Jake decided. "Maria, I want you to prepare the mining charges. We might need them for something other than mining. Ryan, plot an approach course that keeps us hidden as long as possible. Pete, find us a way through that energy field. Lisa, keep monitoring that distress signal. Let me know if anything changes." "What about me, Captain?" Dr. Brooks asked. "Get the medical bay ready for anything. I have a feeling we're going to need all the help we can get." As the New Horizon approached Kepler 442b, the crew got their first good look at what the harvesters were doing to the beautiful crystal world. The planet had once been covered with magnificent formations that sparkled like jewels in the light of its sun. Now, huge sections of the surface were gone, stripped away by the massive mining ships that orbited overhead like metal vultures. "It's horrible," Maria whispered, staring at the main screen. "They're destroying everything." Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had seen the aftermath of harvester attacks before, but never while it was happening. The mechanical precision with which they tore apart entire worlds was sickening. They took everything that was beautiful or alive and left behind only empty rock and metal. "There," Ryan said, pointing to his tactical display. "I'm reading life signs deep underground. Multiple levels of caves, all filled with some kind of crystal formations. The distress signal is coming from the deepest level." Pete studied his navigation screen. I can get us down there, but we'll have to go through the atmosphere fast. The harvesters have patrol ships everywhere. Do it, Jake ordered. The New Horizon dove toward the planet's surface like a falling star. Pete used every trick he knew. To avoid the harvester patrols, hiding in the energy field that surrounded the planet and using the cannon interference from the crystal formations to mask their approach. They skimmed over the devastated landscape, past the huge mining pits and the mountains of debris, until they found what they were looking for. A crack in the ground, barely wide enough for their ship, led down into the crystal caves below. Pete aimed for it with perfect precision, and the New Horizon disappeared into the depths of Kepler 442b, just as a harvester patrol ship passed overhead. They flew through crystal tunnels that were more beautiful than anything any of them had ever seen. The walls sparkled with every color imaginable, and the formations created natural chambers and passages that seemed to go on forever. Their ship's lights reflected off the crystals, creating rainbows that danced around them as they descended, deeper and deeper. The life signs are getting stronger, Dr. Brooks reported. We're close. Finally, they reached a place where the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Pete brought the ship to a gentle landing on a natural ledge of crystal, and they all stared in amazement at what they saw. The chamber was enormous, easily a mile across and half a mile high. Crystal formations covered every surface, creating a palace of light and color that took their breath away. But in the center of it all, coiled around 3 massive eggs, was the source of the distress signal. The dragon was the most magnificent creature any of them had ever seen. Her golden scales caught the light from their ship and threw it back in brilliant flashes. She was huge beyond imagination, but there was something gentle in the way she curled her body around the 3 eggs, protecting them with her own flesh. My God, Lisa breathed. She's beautiful. The dragon lifted her great head and looked at their small ship with eyes like liquid amber. Even through the metal hull of the New Horizon, they could feel the weight of her gaze, the intelligence behind it, the desperate hope. Captain, Lisa said, her voice shaking with excitement, she's trying to communicate. I'm getting psychic impressions. She's thanking us for coming. Jake stared at the magnificent creature before them. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered anything like this. Dragons were supposed to be myths, stories, told to frighten children. But here was living proof that the legends were real. She needs our help, he said simply. That's all that matters. The dragon couldn't save her young alone, but she was no longer alone. 37 humans had crossed the void to answer her call, and they would not let her children die without a fight. Captain Jake Sullivan stood in the airlock of the New Horizon, checking his equipment one last time. His environmental suit was sealed and tested, his communications working perfectly, and his small sidearm loaded with non-lethal rounds. He had no idea if the weapon would be any use against a creature the size of the dragon, but it made him feel a little better to have it. Behind him, 4 other crew members were making their own final preparations. Maria Santos carried her engineering toolkit and a portable power generator. Pete Williams had his navigation equipment and emergency flares. Lisa Morgan wore a special headset designed to boost psychic communications. Dr. Helen Brooks carried her medical scanner in a bag full of supplies she hoped she would never need to use. Remember, Jake said quietly, we don't know how she'll react to us. Move slowly, keep your hands visible, and let me do the talking until we know it's safe. Captain, Lisa said, I'm still getting emotional impressions from her. She's desperate, but not hostile. I think she really does want our help. Jake nodded and opened the airlock door. The 5 humans stepped out onto the crystal ledge, where their ship had landed, and immediately felt the weight of the dragon's attention. Zephyria's massive head turned toward them, her amber eyes studying these small creatures, who had come so far to answer her call. The dragon was even more impressive up close. Her scales were like liquid gold, each one the size of a dinner plate, and they moved with fluid grace as she breathed. Her head alone was larger than their entire landing shuttle, with teeth like sword blades and nostrils that could have swallowed a man whole. But there was intelligence in those ancient eyes, and something else that surprised them all, kindness. "Hello," Jake said aloud, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "My name is Jake Sullivan. We received your distress call and came to help." The dragon's mental voice touched their minds like a gentle breeze, speaking words they could understand, even though she had never learned their language. "You came," she said, and her thoughts were filled with wonder. "I am Zephyria, last guardian of the Valdorian dragons. I did not expect anyone to answer my call, least of all the young race from Earth." Lisa stepped forward, her psychic headset glowing softly. "We heard you calling for help. Your children are in danger." "Yes," Zephyria replied, and her great head turned toward the 3 enormous eggs nestled in beds of glowing crystal. "They will hatch within hours, but the harvesters draw near. I can feel their machines cutting through the upper levels of my home. Soon they will break through, and my children will die before they can even see the light." Maria knelt down beside one of the eggs, her scanner beeping as it analyzed the life signs within. "These readings are incredible. The babies are fully developed and ready to emerge. But the stress from the vibrations above is making them restless. They might try to hatch early, and that could be dangerous." Dr. Brooks joined her, running her own medical scanner over the eggs. The shells are incredibly thick, probably designed to protect them from almost any threat, but they're also very delicate at the hatching stage. Any sudden shock could crack them prematurely. Pete was studying the chamber itself, noting the passages that led deeper into the crystal caves and the ones that went back toward the surface. "How long do we have before the harvesters break through?" Zephyria lifted her head and listened to something only she could hear. "Their largest boring machine is perhaps 2 miles above us. At their current rate, they will reach this chamber in 6 hours, maybe 7. But their advanced scouts will arrive much sooner." "Why can't you fight them?" Jake asked. "You're obviously very powerful." The dragon's mental sigh was filled with centuries of weariness. "I am indeed powerful, young Jake Sullivan. My breath can melt their strongest armor. My claws can tear through their hull plating, and my magic can turn their own weapons against them. But I am only one dragon, and they are many. If I leave this chamber to fight them in the tunnels above, I cannot protect my eggs. If I stay to guard my children, I cannot stop them from reaching us. And if the eggs hatch while you're fighting?" Lisa asked. "Newborn dragons are helpless for their first few hours. They cannot fly, cannot breathe fire, cannot defend themselves in any way. The harvesters would consume them before they could even cry out." Zephyria's voice broke with emotion. "I have lived for 3,000 years, but I cannot solve this puzzle. I cannot save my children." The 5 humans looked at each other, and Jake saw his own determination reflected in their faces. They had come here to help, and they were not going to leave empty-handed. "What if you didn't have to choose?" Maria asked. "What if you could fight the harvesters while someone else protected your eggs?" "Impossible," Zephyria replied. "No creature in this galaxy would dare to stand between a dragon mother and her children. The protective instincts are too strong, the magic too dangerous. Even approaching the eggs of another dragon is considered an act of war among my people." "We're not dragons," Jake said simply. "We're humans. And where we come from, protecting children is something everyone does, regardless of whose children they are." Zephyria stared at him for a long moment, her ancient mind trying to process what he had just said. "You would guard the eggs of a dragon?" You would risk your lives for children that are not your own? Of course we would, Dr. Brooks said, her voice soft but firm. That's what parents do. That's what decent people do. And from what I can see, you're a good mother who loves her children very much. But you are so small, Zephyria protested. So fragile. How could you possibly protect them from the harvesters? Pete grinned and patted his equipment pack. You'd be surprised what humans can do when we put our minds to it. We might not be big, but we're sneaky. And we're very good at making things explode at just the right moment. Maria was already studying the chamber's layout, her engineer's mind working on the problem. The harvesters will have to come through those tunnels to reach this chamber. We can use that to our advantage. Set up choke points, create defensive positions, maybe even collapse some of the passages to slow them down. Our ship has mining. Charges, Jake added. Not much in the way of weapons, but explosives can be very useful in the right hands. And Lisa can hack into their communication systems, cause some confusion in their ranks. I can monitor the babies during the hatching process, Dr. Brooks said. Make sure they're safe and healthy when they emerge. Zephyria looked from one human to another, seeing something in their faces that she had never seen before in 3,000 years of life. These small, fragile creatures were not afraid of her. They were not trying to bargain for treasure or power. They simply wanted to help. A mother protect her children. Why? She asked, her mental voice barely a whisper. Why would you do this for me? You gain nothing from helping a dragon. Your people and mine have no alliance, no treaty, no bond of friendship. We are strangers from different worlds. Jake walked closer to the great dragon, close enough to touch her golden scales if he dared, because it's the right thing to do, because every parent deserves the chance to protect their children, because sometimes the universe is cold and dark, and the only way to bring light is to help each other. And because, Lisa added with a smile, no mother should have to face something like this alone. For the first time in centuries, Zephyria felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The next few hours passed like a whirlwind of activity. The humans worked with desperate efficiency, turning the beautiful crystal chamber into a fortress. Maria Santos crawled through every tunnel and passage, placing her mining charges at strategic points where they would do the most damage to attacking harvesters. Pete Williams mapped every route in and out of the chamber, marking the best defensive positions and escape routes. Lisa Morgan sat cross-legged on the crystal floor, her psychic headset glowing as she reached out through space to find the harvester communication networks. Her fingers danced over her portable computer, writing code that would let her hack into their systems when the time came. Dr. Helen Brooks prepared a medical station near the dragon eggs, setting up equipment to monitor the babies inside, help them if anything went wrong during the hatching. Zephyria watched them work with growing amazement. In 3,000 years of life, she had never seen such determination from any species. These humans were so small compared to her, so fragile that she could accidentally crush them with a single movement. Yet they showed no fear as they prepared to face the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The first egg is starting to crack. Dr. Brooks called out, her scanner beeping rapidly. The baby inside is trying to break free. Everyone stopped what they were doing and gathered around the silver egg. Thin lines appeared on its surface, glowing with soft light as the dragon inside pushed against the shell. Zephyria lowered her great head until she was close enough to touch the egg with her snout, humming a deep, musical sound that seemed to encourage the baby within. It's working, Dr. Brooks said excitedly. The humming is helping the baby stay calm. Its heart rate is steady, and the hatching process is proceeding normally. Jake stood back and watched the ancient dragon sing to her unborn child. The sight filled him with a warmth he had never felt before. Despite her enormous size and terrible power, Zephyria was just a mother worried about her babies. It was something every human could understand. "Captain," Lisa called from her position near the communication equipment. "I'm picking up harvester signals from the upper levels. They've broken through the first barrier. They'll be here in less than 2 hours." "How many?" Jake asked. "At least 50 combat drones, plus 2 heavy mining units. They're moving fast, cutting through the crystal formations like they're made of paper." Maria looked up from the tunnel where she had just finished placing another explosive charge. "My charges are ready, Captain. I've got the main passages rigged to collapse, and backup charges in case some of them get through. But I can't stop them all. Eventually, they're going to reach this chamber." Pete had climbed up onto a high crystal ledge to get a better view of the chamber. "I've identified 3 defensive positions that will give us the best chance. We can use the crystal formations as cover, and the narrow passages will force them to come at us one at a time." "What about our ship?" Jake asked. "I've moved the New Horizon to a hidden alcove about half a mile from here. If we need to evacuate, I can bring it back in 10 minutes. But Captain, with respect, I don't think we should be planning to run. That dragon trusted us to protect her babies. We can't let her down." Jake smiled at his navigator's words. Pete was right. They had made a promise, and humans kept their promises, no matter how dangerous it became. "Dr. Brooks," he called, "how are the eggs doing?" "The first one should hatch within the hour. The other 2 are starting to show stress responses, probably because they can sense the danger approaching. They might try to hatch early to escape, but that could kill them." Zephyria lifted her head from the silver egg and looked at the humans preparing to defend her children. "I must go now," she said, her mental voice heavy with emotion. "The harvesters have reached the middle levels of my home. If I do not stop them there, too many will reach this chamber for you to handle. Are you sure you can fight them alone?" Jake asked. The dragon's eyes blazed with golden fire. "I am the last of the Valdorian dragons. My ancestors ruled 17 star systems and commanded fleets of 1,000 ships. The harvesters may be numerous, but they are still just machines. They do not have the fire of a mother defending her children." Zephyria began to move, her massive body uncoiling from around the eggs with fluid grace. As she prepared to leave the chamber, she paused and looked back at the 5 humans who had volunteered to guard her most precious treasures. "If my children survive this day," she said softly, "they will know that their lives were saved by the bravest creatures in the galaxy. No dragon will ever forget what you have done here." "Just keep yourself safe up there," Maria called out. "These kids are going to want their mother when they hatch." Zephyria's mental laughter was like the sound of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I will return, young engineer. Nothing in this universe will keep me from my children." The great dragon moved toward one of the larger tunnels that led upward toward the battle. As she passed Jake, she lowered her head until one enormous eye was level with his face. "Why do you do this, Jake Sullivan?" she asked quietly. "You could have taken your ship and fled to safety. Why do you stay to fight for creatures you have never seen?" Jake thought for a moment, then reached out and gently touched the golden scales of her snout. The dragon's skin was warm, like metal that had been sitting in the sun, and he could feel the incredible power contained within her massive frame. "Because that's what humans do," he said simply. "When someone needs help, we help them. When children are in danger, we protect them. It doesn't matter if they're human children, or dragon children, or any other kind of children. What matters is that they need us." Zephyria stared at him for a long moment, then gently touched his shoulder with the tip of one massive claw. The gesture was so careful, so precise, that Jake realized she could probably thread a needle with those claws if she wanted to. "Your species is very young," she said, "but you have wisdom that some races never learn in 1,000,000 years. I am honored to call you friend," Jake Sullivan of Earth. With that, the dragon turned and disappeared into the tunnel, her golden scales glowing in the crystal light until she was gone. The chamber suddenly felt much larger and emptier without her presence. "Well," Pete said into the silence, "now what do we do?" "Now we wait," Jake replied, checking his sidearm one more time. "And we get ready to show these harvesters what happens when they threaten children in front of humans." Lisa looked up from her computer, where lines of code scrolled across the screen like digital rain. "I'm into their communication network. When they get close enough, I can start feeding them false information, maybe turn some of their own weapons against them." Dr. Brooks knelt beside the silver egg, which was now covered with glowing cracks. "This little one is almost ready to come out. I can see movement inside the shell." Maria finished arming the last of her explosive charges and took position behind a large crystal formation. "Whatever happens, we protect those eggs, no matter what." Far above them, the sound of battle began to echo through the crystal caves. Zephyria had met the Harvester advance, and the war for the future of the dragon race had begun. In the depths below, 5 humans prepared to make their stand, ready to prove that sometimes the smallest warriors have the biggest hearts. The dragon couldn't save her young alone, but she wasn't alone anymore. The first Harvester drone appeared in the tunnel entrance like a nightmare made of metal and red lights. It was the size of a small car, with spinning blades for arms and sensors that glowed like angry eyes. Behind it, Jake could hear the grinding sound of more machines moving through the crystal passages, cutting their way toward the chamber where 3 dragon eggs waited to hatch. "Contact," Pete whispered into his communication device, crouched behind a formation of blue crystals about 50 feet from the tunnel entrance. Jake raised his weapon and took aim. The sidearm felt small and useless in his hands, but it was better than nothing. Around the chamber, his team was ready. Maria had her finger on the detonator for the first set of explosive charges. Lisa was typing rapidly on her computer, trying to hack into the drone's systems. Dr. Brooks stayed close to the eggs, her medical scanner beeping softly as she monitored the babies inside. The drone moved into the chamber, its sensors sweeping back and forth as it searched for targets. When it saw the 3 massive eggs glowing in their beds of crystal, it let out a mechanical shriek that echoed off the walls. More drones began pouring through the tunnel behind it. "Now," Jake said quietly. Maria pressed the detonator. The tunnel entrance exploded in a shower of crystal and metal, burying half the drones under tons of rock. But more kept coming through other passages, their red eyes glowing in the dust and smoke. Lisa's fingers flew over her keyboard as she sent false commands to the remaining drones. 2 of them suddenly turned and attacked each other, their spinning blades throwing sparks as they fought. A third began moving in circles, its navigation system confused by the fake signals Lisa was feeding it. Jake opened fire with his sidearm, the energy bolt striking a drone in its sensor cluster. The machine stumbled and crashed into a crystal formation, but more took its place. Pete threw one of his emergency flares, and the bright light confused several drones, making them crash into the walls. "The first egg is hatching," Dr. Brooks called out over the noise of battle. Everyone turned to look at the silver egg, which was now glowing so brightly it hurt to look at directly. Large cracks had appeared all over its surface, and something was moving inside, pushing against the shell. A tiny claw, no bigger than a human hand, poked through one of the cracks. "Keep fighting," Jake shouted. "Don't let them near the eggs." A heavy harvester unit, much larger than the drones, smashed through what remained of the tunnel entrance. It was the size of a truck with massive drilling arms and armor plating that looked thick enough to stop a tank. Jake's energy bolts bounced off it harmlessly. Maria triggered another set of charges, bringing down part of the ceiling on top of the heavy unit. It slowed down but kept moving, its drills spinning as it headed straight for the eggs. "I can't." "Stop it," Maria yelled. "My charges aren't big enough." Pete ran toward the machine, pulling the pins from 2 more emergency flares. He threw them directly at the heavy unit's sensor array, and the bright lights caused it to veer off course. But the machine quickly corrected itself and continued toward the eggs. Jake did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He ran directly at the heavy harvester unit, shouting at the top of his lungs. The machine's sensors locked onto him, and it turned away from the eggs to chase this small, noisy target. "Jake, what are you doing?" Lisa screamed. "Giving you time," he yelled back, dodging the machine's drilling arms by inches. "Hack into it. Stop it somehow." Lisa's hands moved faster than they ever had before. She found the heavy unit's command system and began flooding it with conflicting orders. The machine jerked back and forth, confused by the signals, but it was still dangerous. Dr. Brooks suddenly stood up from beside the silver egg. "It's out," she announced with joy. "The first baby is out, and it's beautiful." Everyone stole a quick glance at the tiny dragon that had just emerged from the silver egg. It was no bigger than a horse, with scales that shone like liquid silver and eyes like tiny stars. It looked around the chamber with wonder, completely unaware of the battle raging around it. A sight of the newborn dragon seemed to give the humans new strength. Maria detonated more charges, collapsing another tunnel. Pete grabbed a piece of broken crystal and threw it at a drone, smashing its sensors. Lisa hacked into 3 more machines at once, turning them against each other. Jake was still dodging the heavy unit when something amazing happened. The baby dragon, despite being only minutes old, seemed to understand that these small creatures were protecting it. It let out a tiny roar, barely louder than a kitten's meow, but filled with determination. The sound reached Zephyria, wherever she was fighting in the tunnels above. Her answering roar shook the entire chamber, and the crystal formations began to glow brighter. The dragon mother was coming back. "Second egg is cracking," Dr. Brooks called out. "The copper one. It's responding to its sibling's call." More harvesters poured into the chamber, but they moved more slowly now, as if something was interfering with their systems. Lisa realized that Zephyria's roar had been more than just sound. It had been some kind of psychic attack that was disrupting the machine's communication networks. "I can work with this," Lisa said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "The psychic interference is giving me backdoor access to their entire network." She began taking control of harvester drones by the dozen, turning their own weapons against them. The chamber filled with the sound of metal tearing metal as the machines destroyed each other. The copper eggs split open with a sound like a bell ringing. The second baby dragon emerged, its scales gleaming like polished pennies. It was slightly larger than its silver sibling, and it immediately moved to stand beside the first baby, both of them watching the humans fight to protect them. "Third egg is starting to crack," Dr. Brooks announced. "The green one. All 3 babies are going to make it." Jake finally managed to lead the heavy harvester unit into one of Maria's trap zones. She detonated a cluster of charges directly beneath it, and the machine disappeared into a pit of broken crystal and twisted metal. The remaining drones seemed to lose their coordination completely. Lisa had taken control of their command systems, and she was using them to clear out the tunnels, hunting down any remaining harvesters that might try to attack. "Clear," Pete called out. "I don't see any more hostiles." The third egg opened with a flash of green light, and the final baby dragon stepped out into the world. Its emerald scales caught the light from the crystals, making it look like a living jewel. All 3 babies moved together, forming a small group near their empty eggshells. That was when Zephyria returned. The great dragon appeared in the main tunnel entrance, her golden scales scorched and blackened from battle, but her eyes bright with victory. She saw her 3 children standing safe and healthy in the crystal chamber, protected by 5 humans who looked exhausted but triumphant. "My children," she whispered, her mental voice filled with overwhelming joy. "My beautiful children." "The?" Baby dragons ran to their mother as fast as their tiny legs could carry them, chirping and squeaking with happiness. Zephyria lowered her great head and nuzzled each one gently. Her eyes closed in relief. Jake and his team stood back and watched the reunion, all of them smiling despite their exhaustion. They had done it, against impossible odds, with weapons that were barely adequate and no military training. 5 humans had held off an entire harvester assault force and protected 3 newborn dragons. "Thank you," Zephyria said, looking at each human in turn. "You have given me everything that matters in the universe. How can I ever repay such a gift?" Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. "Just watch your kids grow up happy and healthy. That's payment enough for any of us." The dragon couldn't save her young alone, but she hadn't needed to. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the smallest hearts carry the greatest courage.